Ladies and gentlemen, good evening once again. And on my own behalf and on behalf of Hyderabad Literary Festival and my colleagues Ajay Gandhi, Amita Desai, and Kinnara Murthy, I welcome you to this evening's online session. And we are delighted and honored that Lieutenant General HS Panag has agreed to be with us this evening. And he will be in conversation with Major General Shravan Kumar on General Panag's recent book, The Indian Army. And I think we'll be spending most of the time if I start to introduce General Panag, because all of you have already received our email invitation, where we have given a short bios of both Lieutenant General Panag and Major General Shravan Kumar. But I just wanted to say that just to quickly introduce the book before I hand over to the two generals, is that this is a book which is a collection of General Panag's columns in three publications: News Laundry, Times of India, and The Print. These articles were published in these three publications in the last few years. And General Panag writes now a weekly exclusive column for The Print. And these articles that he has written have been now collected in this highly readable, even for somebody like me, who is a complete outsider to the army, they're extremely readable, very highly recommended to everyone. Even if you are not really interested in the army or in the war, it's a wonderful style that General Panag has developed over the years. And these articles that he has collected in this book are divided into 6 sections. Interestingly, the very first section, the book begins with this section on human rights. And then the section on reforms, leadership, reminiscences, conflict, and unforgettable heroes. These are the 6 broad categories under which General Panag has bunched his columns in the 3 newspapers, in the 3 publications that I mentioned. And this evening, General Panag will be in conversation with Major General Shravan Kumar, who is an artillery officer, and he has also served in the UN peacekeeping mission in Angola. And we are delighted that the two of them have agreed to be with us this evening and speak to us about this extremely readable book on the Indian Army. Let me also mention that we are thankful to Westland Publications for bringing this book and the author to HLF. So with these few words of introduction, and just one more announcement before I hand over. Next session of HLF would be on 7th of August. And we will have a conversation with Dr. Priyambada Gopal of Cambridge University, who is the author whose recent book called The Insurgent Empire will be under discussion on 7th of August. You will, of course, get the invite, but please do make a note that our next session will be on 7th of August, as usual at 7 p.m. On both this platform as well as on YouTube. So with these few words, gentlemen, over to you. Shravan, may I request you to take over, please?
Yeah, sure. Thank you a lot, Dr. Jayakumar. And good evening to you, General Panag, and greetings of the day to everybody who's listening. And hopefully there are people in other time zones too who possibly are watching this program. So greetings to everybody. Let me begin at the beginning, how I know General Panag. The fact of the matter is that he's one of the first few army officers that I'd ever possibly seen in my life. I had seen him as an instructor in the Indian Military Academy when I was a gentleman cadet undergoing training. So I used to see this ramrod straight, tall officer traveling majestically in a military truck with his pet poodle in his lap. And I thought, wow, there goes a man. So that was my first ever sighting of this legend called Gen HS Panag. And thereafter, 37 years in the army, destiny had it that I could never get within handshaking distance of this legendary general. In spite of being in the same gathering a number of occasions, social and professional, it never came to pass that I would actually come within handshaking distance, or what today is called the social distancing norm. So never within 6 feet of general. So I'm very thankful to the management of Hyderabad Literary Festival, the directors, General Dr. Vijay Kumar and the other directors, for giving me this opportunity to be in the same frame as him and getting us virtually together, even if not physically. So that being my understanding of General Panag, having seen him rise in the army as a battalion group commander or combat group commander in Leh, and thereafter commanding a brigade in high altitude, a division thereafter, and then a strike corps, subsequently 2 commands, the Northern Command and the Central Command. But I will obviously go at the end of the book and begin where it all began. Now that's the book for all those who haven't seen yet, the Indian Army, Reminiscences, Reforms, and Romance. Interestingly, sir, a lot of my military friends wanted to know the romance part. They said, let's discuss that. So I want to tell them that though there's a very poignant story about Sawai Ranjit Singh, a tragedy romance. But more than that, I think you mean the romance of life in the army, because
yes.
Army challenges, so romantic, everyday life. Well, we'll discuss that later. I'll go back to the end of your book and read out what you've been saying all your professional life. This is what the general says: don't do anything that I don't do. Do like me, do better than me, and do it now. Oh, what a fantastic motto. All of us, most of us rather, who have been, who have heard this before, have tried to emulate this, try to follow what you said with varying degrees of success. Yours, of course, has been an extremely illustrious career. But what I do feel that it's a kind of a coming of a full circle. If we compare it, your career along with that of another legend of the army, Colonel Shamsher Singh, who also happens to be your father. So, sir, we would possibly begin this discussion or this little exploration with something about Colonel Shamsher Singh, the legend that he was, the kind of things that he did in his professional life and his personal life, and the way that molded you thereafter. Would you like to speak about that?
My father was my role model. In fact, this book is dedicated to my father and, of course, to my wife, who stood by me all the time. My father had very humble beginnings. He belonged to a small landholding family. He spent a lot of his early life in the village. His father was a Thanedar in the Patiala state. And so thereafter, as he grew up, he also spent a lot of time in the Thanas. But the rustic village life and the privations, which a joint family owning just about 15, 20 acres, and the family was very large. And so that had hardened him a lot. And he became an outdoor man. And also, he was not that tall, much shorter than me, but he was very stoic and a very determined person. And he never allowed anyone to bully him. And he hated anyone to be bullied by anybody. To cut the long story short, he became an outstanding sportsman and joined the Mahindra College, where he captained, I think, athletics, basketball, football, hockey, and what have you. And then he joined, because he was not from a big landholding family, so he was enrolled as a JSO cadet. If you belonged to a large landholding family, a Jagirdar family, then you were made officer cadets. But then he found that while these cadets were under training, the JSO cadets and the officer cadets in the state forces, but he was better than everybody else. And when that happened, so Maharaja Patiala, Captain Amrinder Singh's father, Yadvinder Singh. He was visiting the units, and my father marched up to him and he said that I'm better than all these people. Then why am I being made a JCO cadet to become a JCO, and why can't I become an officer cadet to become an officer? So Maharaja said, okay, give this fellow a chance. So then they went for the selection board. First, the interviews with British Army, where he was #1. And then he joined the Indian Military Academy in January 1940. Did very well there, was part of the sports team, hockey team, and the football team. And in fact, captained the hockey team in his third term. That time, the IMA team had 6 Olympians in the team. So such was the caliber of who had played for India. That was his caliber as a sports person. He joined a cavalry unit, the 1st Patiala Lancers, and did very well. Luckily, this unit was getting converted to mechanized, being mechanized, and they got armored cars. The CO was so impressed by him that he made him do all the courses on armored cars at Ahmednagar, then back in 1942-43, and he became a master of the craft. Then he went overseas to North Africa with his unit, served there, and after Second World War, when he got back, he was transferred to the 1st Patiala infantry, which is now 15 Punjab. And that's the time he really earned a name for himself. He took part in all major operations that happened. 1st Sikh had landed at Srinagar, and 1st Patiala then landed at Jammu. And the rescuing of Cham, the capture of Cham, where he led an attack, and it is described by a gunner officer, General Lakshman Singh Lehal. Lakshman Singh Lehal has described this action as a model infantry attack that he has ever seen. And even later on, he told me when he had retired that he's never seen an attack of this nature. And that attack was led by none other than Shamsher. But the hallmark of in the operations of 1947-48 was when he went and defended the area across the Zizila Pass, from Zizila Pass to Mechanized, because the Gilgit scouts had come in, and exactly in those areas where they came in 99 during Kargil operations. And he, with 2 companies, was the force commander there. And he managed to hold on against the Gilgit scouts, and subsequently took part in the operations when they had to pull back to Zuzila because of pressure, but subsequently he took part in the operations and was there at Kargil. And that's the day when he was at Kargil that I was born, 4th December 1948. And he was right there at Kargil. So then this man, of course, later he commanded 17 Sikhs, he commanded 18 Sikhs, and was ramrod straight. I never saw him doing anything wrong, ever. And one incident which I have recorded, I have a number of anecdotes about him, is that he had phenomenal moral courage, was always involved with the troops and always led from the front. He always gave a personal example in everything. After retirement, he went into social work, and when he died at the age of 96 in 2012, and all his former comrades and his soldiers, there were about 1,000 people who came for his funeral, and the ceremony that we held after that. And that's the kind of soldier, gentleman my father was.
What I really also meant when I said it's coming of full circle is the way how your father started with the cavalry, and then came on to join the infantry, commanded infantry, 101 battalion, 2 battalions, and then went on to become the center commandant. And the son begins his journey with the infantry from the Sikh regiment, 4 Sikh, then going on to the famous Chindits battalion, 5 Gorkha Rifles, and then going on to command a mechanized battalion. And subsequently, of course, your father retires as the center commandant, and you retire as the GOC-in-C of the Central Command. So it does seem to be that, you two generations together have brought the entire army career to a complete fruition, as one would call it. That's in a way very, very remarkable. But you also talk of your father's generation, a kind of a bygone era, the kind of things they used to do, which possibly you as a child have seen happening. We've heard stories, but you are witness to some of them. One of them is, of course, actually launching the battalion to kill a tiger with a bayonet. I mean, a challenge given by a brigade commander that anybody can shoot and kill a tiger, but let's see if 17C can do it with a bayonet or with bare hands. And actually, your father goes and gets it done with your famous Fauja Singh and Sucha Singh. I mean, that's a very interesting anecdote. Possibly it's something kind of makes everybody's hair stand on. Can you try it and narrate it in your own words?
Yes. Actually, there's only one instance recorded. I have searched the net. I have also, over the years, tried to look for a similar instance. There is no instance in the history where a tiger, in recent times, I'm not talking, of course, in earlier times, people have killed tigers with swords, with lances, and what have you. And Hari Singh Nalwa actually caught the tongue of a tiger and killed it by choking it. Of course, this is part folklore and part probably true, but there's no instance of a tiger being killed with a bayonet. I was 6 years old, and my father was commanding 17th Sikh at Agra, and the unit was out on their annual training camps and exercises in the forest jungles of Shivpuri. So there was a Sepoy named Fauja Singh. He was working in the officers' mess. He went to collect some firewood. Those days, firewood was used, and there was no kerosene issued or gas. There was not there at all, and it was firewood. So he went to collect some firewood from the forest, and a tigress, which was with cubs. And probably because of the cubs, etc., she had probably become a man-eater, because normally tigers do not attack human beings as such. So she pounced on him. And so he struggled with her, but he got injured badly. His turban came in the tiger's mouth. The tigress thought that she's got the kill, and she took the turban away. And Fauja Singh, of course, was rescued finally and sent to the hospital. And then the commander was Brigadier Danny Misra from Armored Corps, and this unit was part of the Armored Division at that time. So there was a discussion where they said, okay, this is our training area. Now this tiger has become a man-eater, and we must kill it because other units would also be coming and doing training here. So now Brigadier Danny Misra was, also a very sort of bold commander. He used to smoke cigars, I remember, as a child. So he said, but Shamsher, surely you're not going to shoot this tiger. I mean, can't the Sikhs kill it with bayonets? My father thought for a moment, and then he said, so be it, sir. So be it. So the die was cast. Actually, Brigadier Danny Misra didn't believe this whole thing. He thought that when the unit moves to kill the tigress, so if the noise and everything, the tigress will probably come towards that side. And he and the GOC was General Dargalkar, another famous personality of Armored Corps. So they sat on a machan with sporting weapons, and they said that, okay, when this line moves and the haka kind of a thing takes place, tigers will come this side and we will get the kill. But my father, like a typical soldier, he rehearsed the unit that this is how we'll do it. If when the tigers comes out, the person who was there has to use the bayonet, and then from the side we'll all pounce on the tigress and nab it in case she is not killed, because the tiger is a very solid animal. So the line started, and the unit battle cry, Bole Sonihal, Sat Sri Akal, this thing. And my father also gave them the example of Hari Singh Nalwa, how he had, that is Maharaja Ranjit Singh's general, who actually went and captured the frontier region and right up to Jalalabad. So he gave the example how he had killed the tigers by choking it by catching the tongue. So the line got this thing and it started marching. So as they went forward, they hit the den, and where they found 3 cubs. They were captured, later on given to Agra Zoo. Now, then of course, the line moved forward, and the lioness roared. As she roared, my father, used the typical Punjabi word, "Tagde ho jao," gird up. And the tigers came out of the thicket and pounced on the line. It was a line almost 150 meters, long, because soldiers were all marching, going line abreast. Now, Sucha Singh was the man, a young soldier. He instinctively did the typical bayonet drill and, pointed the 303 rifle with the bayonet, which is made of brittle metal and pierces. And the tigers came straight onto the bayonet. But such was the force of her attack that she dragged Sucha Singh, about 10, 15 yards away, and was struggling away this thing. So, of course, as per the drill, everybody pounced on the tigers, and suddenly there was a shot fired. So my father said, well, what happened? And then who fired the shot? But nobody had fired a shot anyway. The shot came from the distance from the Machad. Because seeing this commotion, that what had happened, one of the officers, I don't know whether it was Danny Mishra or whether it was Galka, he dropped his rifle and he got fired. That we come to later. Anyway, so Sucha Singh was badly injured, but the tigers was, of course, killed. And so Sucha Singh evacuated to the hospital. A telegram was, a message was sent to Fauja Singh, revenge taken, trouble recovered. So thereafter, a few days later, Brigadier Danny Mishra and my father, they went to visit Sucha Singh in the hospital. He was, of course, promoted on the spot as a Lance Naik right there. So they gave him his Lance Naik stripe. And they asked him, okay, well, who killed Sucha Singh? He used to speak in anglicized tone, Kya tumne hi sher ko mara? So he said, Saab, असली ਤਾਂ मैं ही मारिया सीगा बेनट कहंदा फिर तेरे मेरे वर्गियां ने भी गोलियां चलातीਆਂ ਤੇ ਹੋਰਾਂ ਨੇ ਵੀ ਆ ਕੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਮਾਰ ਲਿਆ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਤੇ ਸਭ ਦਾ ਨਾਂ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਪਰ ਮਾਰਿਆ ਮੈਂ ਹੀ ਸੀਗਾ so first to that effect and the bayonet was bent slightly, very unusual because bayonet is brittle. It normally either cracks or it pierces. So it got bent into shape like this, and it was returned to the ordnance by over the enthusiastic quartermaster who wanted to get it replaced. It was brought back from there. It is still framed in 17 Sikh, which is known as the Tiger Battalion, along with the tiger skin and this thing of the day, the newspaper headlines. When the units used to march back from the training area, and that was a tradition those days, and somewhere in between it got lost. So this was sign of that we have completed an exercise and now we are coming back. And this time, of course, the previous evening, the afternoon, the tigers had been killed. So the whole night unit marched. The next day they marched, and they were marching on the mall road of Agra, now known as Prithviraj Road. And my father had a bungalow there. I came out of the bungalow, and I distinctly remember the tigers on the bonnet of the jeep, and my father walking alongside. So that's the memory of the tigers I have. As I said, it's a very unique case, and Fauja Singh, Sucha Singh is still alive, and he lives in a village near Sangrur. So he is a person who has become a legend in his lifetime. And in fact, I have approached many people to make a documentary on him. I said, there's never been an instance of this type in history.
Fascinating. Truly, sir, I think people larger than life, whether they were officers, commanding officers, commanders, even Jawans, somebody like Sucha Singh, possibly today rare to come across. But I'm sure we have people with equal courage. We've had tremendous display of courage in Kargil. But leadership, I think, is what mattered then. Leadership is what it matters now. And you've written extensively about military leadership. One of the things, one of the refrains that I can make out is that, or what you say, is that Indian military leadership is good, but not good enough. That's a qualifying statement that you make. And then there are certain arguments that come in support of this. That while the junior officers, even up to the CO level, lead from the front, we've had very recent instances where commanding officers have personally led operations and sacrificed their lives. The senior officers are not walking the talk. That is one of the observations that the general makes. The second thing is that you say that, hello? Yeah, I think there's some interruption.
Yeah.
Right.
Please go ahead.
Second is about that the Indian Army officer is overtrained and undereducated. That's another observation the general makes. And also something that you lament, I think I would extend it further. You say that why is it that there's so many people who so well-read, retired officers who don't take to writing? Why is it that there is such dearth of writing from veterans? I would extend it and say, why only on strategic affairs? Why not even general writing? There's so many things that one can write about. But yes, there is, you really don't see a veteran's voice so strongly heard in these circles. So what are your kind of comments on this observations?
You want my specific comments on whether why they don't take to writing, or the leadership as a whole?
Leadership as a whole, because this will flow out of that as a whole.
Okay. See, in the military, we, based on the orders of the leader, soldiers go into battle, and they they are ready to. I mean, based on those orders, you can die in action. You can be killed in action. So it's extremely important that the leadership that we have in the military is flawless, or as good to the ideal as it possibly is. Why we all have our own EQ levels when we join, soldiers and officers, and it's formed, and your society at large has affected you because you are seeing what is happening in the society. Of course, it's changing. What was in the 50s was the same in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and now the environment has changed, and the background of soldiers has changed. So there's an EQ level with which he comes there. Thereafter, what the military does is, military is based on ideals. As I said, you want an ideal leader. You want, the organization is non-productive. It is the instrument of last resort of the state. It has to perform. So the military ideals are absolute, and all the military demand, rules, regulations are always absolute. And here we have an individual who's come with the EQ. So in the training, whether it's for the officers or it's for the soldiers, we try and bring about uniformity and instill the military value system, the ethics and other leadership qualities in them during the training period. And then over a period of time, we have continuity training in the units, and there is a leadership development program for the officers, and it carries on. It's an endless thought. So we try to bridge the gap, and the gap is bridged to a great extent. But two things happen. One is that whatever the gap is left, it has to be enforced by rules, regulations, and law, because you cannot afford this gap. So to bring about adherence, you have to enforce it. Over a period of time, we have become a little casual with enforcing rules and regulations. And that also has to do with leadership flaws. Because when you are not a role model yourself, and it's very difficult to crack down on the errant people who are violating rules, regulations, and other military ethics, etc. The other thing that happens is that when you try to bring about uniformity, you actually kill the spirit. It happens, but why you kill the spirit is because the methodology that we are using is archaic. It has not kept pace with times. there was a time when up to the First World War, even the Second World War, when most of the actions were direct. And prior to that, of course, the battles were fought face to face. The actions were direct, and what I would say that the firepower, etc., was limited. So you wanted absolute obedience, and you said there's no scope for a man applying his mind. Once he's told to move forward, he has to move forward. No. Whereas what the requirement is that he has to be an enlightened soul. He has to think, and he has to exercise initiative. If he's only a robo, then he's not a good soldier. He'll perform up to a point, but not beyond that. When he's left on his own, he will not be able to perform. Will always look back for orders. So this environment we have not been able to change, unfortunately. So this is the root cause. So we first break them to break their spirit, to bring about uniformity, and then all our life we are wanting that man, which I've written in one of the articles, who will deliver the message to Garcia, the man who exercises initiative, the man who is intellectually endowed, the man who will have a backdrop of knowledge before he executes a thing on the ground. So this is the kind of a problem that we are facing. So we have not overcome this problem. And our military academies, I am personally a success story from our military academy. Recently, Admiral Arun Prakash also has written. He was the commandant of the academy, also alumni of National Defense Academy. So, and I have also been on a committee that went for reforms there. There is a problem that we have in these academies with the faculty. See, when you select a faculty, you have to select role models. We base them on the reporting system, which itself has got inbuilt flaws. So we had an instance about a few years back of a commandant who was removed from command as commandant of NDA and court-martialed for moral turpitude. What impact would he have made on the cadets who were there during that time? It just happened 6-7 years ago. The younger officers who arrived there, they tend to relive their own life, what they faced there, and consequently the leadership development, which is largely the job of the faculty, gets flawed. So while academically we teach them, so that's what happens. Then a lot of stress is laid on the barracks. Then the barracks to teach leadership quality to the seniors. So they are the ones who actually supposed to instill character qualities in the juniors. Now, yes, it's a very good system and it should work. But what happens is that, like everywhere else, the desire and is part of this culture, that it leads to very kind of draconian kind of a system where hazing, bullying, unauthorized punishments under the garb that we are toughening up this thing, we are making them face life. I mean, surely a marathon runner doesn't have to be dragged made to roll from down the stairs or crawl on the floor to become tough. You become tough by scientific methods, and not by this kind of a method. So that's another flaw in the academies is, and both with the officers and with the soldiers, is that we lay too much of emphasis on training and not so much on education. We trying to give the officers a BA or BSc degree from NDA. Now, of course, Tech has also started for naval cadets. What is the use of that? Whereas West Point is known as America's best university, because the subjects they are dealing with are aeronautical science, space, warfare, human behavior, naval science, aeronautical science, and what have you. So we need to change our curriculum. The guys are already come through a selection process, the cadets, and we must let them have a broader knowledge. In fact, all the knowledge that you require later on theory of war, operational art, strategy, the theory part of it should actually be imbibed right at the military academy stage. Whereas we spend so much of time later in a graduated process of learning. Learning has there's no graduation required in learning. You can learn everything at the age of 25, or you can continue a graduated process and try to learn the same thing up to the age of 50. That's when we go and do the National Defense, go to the National Defense College, of which you or yourself can alumni, or a little earlier than that. So what we produce in the end is that a sort of a flawed kind of leadership is produced in the end, which is, as I said, good, but not good enough. Intellectually, we are not adequately empowered. And so the graduated learning doesn't really help. We should be more learning by experience. And so that is why we are faced with the situation that our hierarchy is unable to act as role models for the subordinates. So a very good colonel who is under supervision, because there is supervision which is taught to us everywhere, adherence to orders and everything, and directly supervised. So, like I have often heard, this orders not checked, orders not obeyed, and so on. It's not self-actualization. So while he's a very good colonel, the same colonel then becomes gets involved in violation of ethics as a general. Otherwise, why should generals be found to be corrupt or to be found to be in various kind of scandals as far as morals are concerned? So while we may be looking better than the rest of the society, good but not good enough I would still stand by what I have written.
So this is one aspect of leadership development, and the organization has the other aspect of organization development, or what we're seeing as the reforms in the army. You've written extensively about it. One of the issues that we take up possibly is about right-sizing the army. Every time this issue comes up, we speak of the increasing pension bill, and then how to cut down the numbers, improve the teeth-to-tail ratio, and possibly replace manpower with technology. But the fact of the matter is that technology is not necessarily interchangeable with boots on ground. And that's more evident than ever with what is happening currently in Eastern Ladakh. So how do we kind of balance this out? How do we prepare for tomorrow's battles, which possibly would be highly technologically intensive, vis-a-vis the ongoing battles, which require enormous amount of manpower to hold ground, to kind of deny space to enemy, and to carry on with the job that we're doing today? How does one go around balancing this out?
I think you rightly said a balance has to be struck. There is a certain extent manpower is required. But there are two aspects to this. One is that technology has improved. There's been a quantum jump as far as technology is concerned. You take case of the number of aircraft you require to carry out an attack on a bridge. People calculated that you required anything, hundreds of aircraft to get one bridge, because bombing was done by aiming from the top, and the attacks were the rockets only came towards the end of Second World War, and so on and so forth. And we heard of 1,000 bomber raid on Berlin and what have you to destroy the industrial potential. Whereas today, precision guided munitions, a single aircraft with a single precision guided bomb can destroy a bridge. After all, you only have to destroy one span. I'm just giving you one example. Similarly, look at the artillery. The artillery fire used to be predicted. Now we have got technologies. It's all that you require money for it. Of course, that's why do we say that there is a differential between China and India? It's not that we don't have. We also have bought precision guided munitions for the artillery. We had the Krasnopol, and now we are buying the Israeli ammunition, and also from United States, Copperhead and all. We have read about it. It's a question of numbers. So if we have a few hundred, China will have it in thousands. So when Chinese will use their artillery, it will be a lot of precision guided munitions. And then, of course, the missiles and all. So there is, to a great extent, the technology, this quantum jump in technology has overcome the requirement of large amount of manpower. So earlier, when you have had predicted fire, or even it was directed, hundreds of shells were fired. Now maybe a job can be done with much less, but you have to have the money to get that technology. So when you don't have the money, like we don't have the money in India, so then of course we go towards mass. We go towards more manpower rather than rely upon technology. So a balance has to be struck. And then the wars, the kind of wars that we fought earlier, decisive wars like Bangladesh is a classic example where we have liberated East Pakistan, created a new nation state. And those kind of decisive wars are unlikely, because with the nuclear backdrop, the modern wars are going to be very short. And at times there may be no war at all. It may be just that the use of certain actions, and thereafter the defeat is after all in the mind. It doesn't have to be physical. Something like what is happening on the LAC today. The Chinese have come in, preempted us, surprised us. They come in and secured certain areas. No, they are sitting there. They're daring you, come and attack me. Now there's a differential in capabilities, and I think no matter what we say, what we said earlier, we're ready to fight 2.5 fronts. We are conscious of it. We are conscious that a setback is possible, and particularly the way they are arrayed. So then you look at the either we'll be fighting 4th generation wars or 5th generation wars or hybrid wars, or even when confrontation takes place between states that have nuclear weapons, it will have to be technology driven and of a very short duration. But unsettled borders require to be guarded all the time. Now, what has happened today is I'm supporting your argument of manpower. What you said, not your argument, what you said, is that our main defenses were on the heights, dominating heights, and we felt that if China comes on a major offensive, we were looking at a major conflict. This is where we'll fight them, in very good positions, because all the routes converge there, where our main defenses are. But this vast area that was the no man's land ahead of the main defenses is where China has come. And we were not defending it. We were only policing it or keeping it under surveillance. And for whatever reasons, our surveillance failed. So now, of course, we'll have to put manpower in future there, or technology, because the reaction has to be faster. So it has to be manpower to a great extent. So unsettled borders require large amount of manpower so that this sort of a thing doesn't happen. We will probably end up holding the LAC also like the LOC. So certainly a balance has to be struck. As India gets more and more money, you will find that we will automatically start reducing the size of the armed forces. All other countries have followed a similar route, and I see no reason why we shouldn't follow it.
Shravan, we have about 5 to 6 minutes.
5 to 6. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, fine. Right. But we have 5 minutes, and then you've already brought up the unspoken word, China. What everything kind of boils down to, and what everyone at least agrees to today, is that we are in it for the long haul. Nobody seems to believe that this thing is going to go away in a hurry. But there are certain assumptions that we've made all along, that China may do this, may not do this, like some that you have written about also, that what is their basic strategy of that we will be continually and in competitive conflict with China. And they have something like a strategy which says establish presence in disputed areas militarily, and then use coercive diplomacy to include military threats and actions, and then use of legal rhetoric to buttress their claims, and finally deploy information warfare further to kind of validate their claims. You think we can all see that this is playing by the book, and all these things, that assumptions and assertions made are playing out. But thereafter, what? I mean, where does this take us, and where do you see? How do you see this entire situation panning out eventually?
See, briefly, China wants to assert its hegemony over India. It doesn't want India to be a equal, sort of a equal competitor in any field. So that's a fundamental kind of reason. That's an overarching reason why China has not settled the boundary, the border and dispute and etc., or not even demarcated the LAC. It wants to keep the sword of democracy hanging on us. So there are many reasons for this. Our opposition to them in the foreign policy, our alignment with the US, our opposition to China, Pak economic corridor, what have you. There are any number of factors in this. But the major reason, which in my view is that they are very conscious of the fact that the infrastructure to which the last 6 years, and the credit for this must go to this government, and is that they have given a lot of impetus to it, both in terms of money and in terms of vigor, that our infrastructure has reached a stage where we are actually threatening the territories which were usurped by China, Aksai Chin in the 50s without firing a shot. And whatever was left of it was in 1962, and the area between Aksai Chin and Chishu, which was to cover the approaches there. Now, our infrastructure today is threatening. From the west to the DBO sector, it is threatening the western approach to Aksai Chin. And Galwan is another direct approach to Aksai Chin. Then Hot Springs, Gogra, this area and the Pangong Tso, this entire area leads to the southern approaches to the Aksai Chin. It's very sensitive to it. This was also the reason was when our forward policy was encroaching on more and more territory, and we were also getting behind China in Chinese posts in 1962. Then this was the reason why they attacked. In fact, very interestingly, the Galwan post that we established in 1962 was actually the route taken by us was not through the Galwan River. It was from the Hot Springs area. That's how these areas are interlinked, the Hot Spring Gogra area. So we went from there, and we went and near to the source of the Galwan River. We actually went and sat behind the Chinese in 1962. And then the Chinese moved more forces and surrounded that post, which was finally captured on 18th of October. So China is extremely sensitive. So when plus the verbal threats that were issued by our leaders, which rightly our area, I mean, we were making a matter of fact statement that we will get back our lost territories. Anybody should. It's a parliament resolution. But China doesn't take it kindly. They think that you are trying to you're threatening my territory. And whether that it comes today, whether it's 10 years, 20 years, China looks at it like that. So this is the reason why they came in. So these areas are tactical, appear to be, the operation was tactical in nature, but each of these areas has got strategic importance. So what happens, the way they have cut off at Galwan, whether or not they actually have come a kilometer ahead or not, whether they come to the confluence, even if they get on top of the hills where they are today, in their own area, the road is interdicted. It's just 5 kilometers away, and PGMs and everything, the road will get interdicted. The bridges will get destroyed. And the SSN sector or the DBO sector has again further been narrowed down at Depsang, in the Depsang plains, at Butse, where before it becomes into the plains in the mountainous area. So they have isolated the DBO sector if there's a major escalation. So that then the collusion with Pakistan, because just across another hill range, the Saserla range, the Saser Kangani range, you have got the Siachen Glacier, and from where and then into the Nubra Valley. So this collusion is also a possibility there. Similarly, this area where we were developing these roads, they have come and occupied this Pangong area. So all the routes that are leading to Hot Springs in Gogra can be cut off from there. Because once you had finger 4, they actually want to come to finger 2, then you are right at Phobrang. Today itself, it was in the news that we are now hastily developing, busy developing the road to Khobrang. So all these areas have got the implications are strategic in nature. And notwithstanding the disengagement, in Galwan it has taken place. In Depsang, no. In Depsang, there's a big question mark because nobody has even talked of Depsang because there no satellite imagery hasn't emerged. But there are reports that 15 to 18 kilometers they have come inside over a substantial area. One doesn't know the width of the area, but depth is what we call. At Hot Springs, they have again not this thing because we were developing route to the north, again trying to go back using the same route towards the source of Galwan River. Of course, now the LAC is much ahead, but so there they have disengaged, but not to the extent they're desirable. They're still on our side. Same thing at Gogra and at between Finger 4 to 8, they have just not budged. So they have brought this whole disengagement process to a grinding halt, as also the diplomatic process that was going on. So even a compromised sort of political aim that we had to get to status quo ante April 2020 with buffer zones created. So it was a compromise by us, but it satisfies China to that extent. Even that doesn't seem to be feasible as on today. So we are left with a military option, and military option has got problems. The differential is there, and they are sitting in a position of advantage because of this. Because operations launched towards Khobrang cuts off a large chunk of area. Similarly at Depsang. So no matter what we do, our only bet is that whether China escalates to settle the matter quickly by inflicting a sort of a sharp defeat on us in a short span of about 7-8 days, no more than that. Or we eventually do it. We need not do it today. We can do 6 months later. We can do it a year later. But till then, the situation continues. But our only sort of bet is that if not directly, there's no point tackling these positions. That no matter what China does, because of its position of advantage that it has got, we should go all out in one sector, wherever it is. It can be across the LAC, right across. It doesn't have to be in Ladakh only, or elsewhere in Ladakh, or maybe elsewhere. That we capture a sizable chunk of territory for a quid pro quo settlement. So if this is the situation that prevails, it's a very difficult time for us. And we have to come to, I would say, as a nation, we have to come to grips with it. And both the armed forces as well as the political leadership.
Thank you very much. That's very illuminating. Possibly all that we can say to sum up is that the saga is still unfolding and there's picture abhi baki hai. I was feeling a little guilty that we've not really made a mention of our Western neighbor, Pakistan, but you did make a mention about the collusion with China. And at this point of time, I think there is not much time to really discuss further. I'm sure some of these aspects may be covered in the question and answer session that will follow. But thank you very much for giving a very wide.
Well, it was a privilege indeed to have, one of my illustrious cadets putting me on the mat, posing very interesting and very intellectual questions to me. And it's a privilege to have a dialogue with you.
It's an honor, sir. And I'll hand you back to Dr. Vijay Kumar to take the proceedings further. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Dr. Vijay, I'm not stuck for time. All is in your court.
No. There have been a few questions, so I didn't want to deprive them of that pleasure of asking those questions.
Certainly, we'll definitely take
but before I open up the questions, I had a few of my own. Since it has been a conversation between two generals, now it would be a more general questions.
Yes, certainly.
You have said very interestingly, your book begins with this section on human rights. And you write a very powerful statement, which I would like to read. The state and its armed forces must never look like the terrorists they deal with and must not get carried away by emotions, ideology, or a version of nationalism which is being propagated by the government in power. I think that's and of course you begin with that human shield incident in Kashmir, and you write very strongly about it, and you say that it has been admitted as an aberration. There have been a couple of questions on the Indian Army and its human rights record. So would you like to comment on that particular section on human rights, sir?
See, as a policy, no army in the world, let alone Indian Army, can ever issue directions that we have to single out population or a section of the population during an insurgency with a no holds barred kind of a action. Any army that does it comes to grief. Pakistan Army did that in East Pakistan, and you have seen the end result. You are dealing with your own people, so there's no question of using draconian methods. Indian Army has evolved a very fail-safe model, and even our political leadership has been handling it very right. It takes a long time, but we have managed to contain, control, and finally find a political solution. Somehow, with respect to the population in J&K, because of the legacy of the baggage of history that we are carrying of the invaders following the Islamic faith who came to India and Pakistan's collusion with the terrorists, that there is a kind of a anti-feeling that develops against the entire population. But again, we had similar situation in Punjab, where for 20 years or 15 years, I would say, there was a communal tinge to the entire struggle or insurgency or also terrorism that was on at that time. Hindus were taken off buses, singled out and killed. There was migration of population. And yet today, I think this entire business of Khalistan in Punjab is a bogey. There is nothing of that sort. I live in the countryside, and we have altered that. So everything can be reversed. We must not create a situation that we reach a point where we cannot reverse it. And this is why human rights this thing is extremely important. There has to be a distinction between the terrorists and between the armed forces. You cannot violate your own rules, regulations, norms, and a reputation that you have created for we have created for ourselves. That is why this incident was a benchmark incident, where a kind of I would say a rather childish action by a junior officer. This entire story about saving people and all was concocted, and the army was party to this concoction. And nothing of that sort happened. He just decided on his own to teach them a lesson. We have had similar incidents earlier, but all that you do in such, you don't punish that man, you don't hang him. You give him a rap on the knuckles, and a statement is given. Something wrong has been done. The officer has been dealt with. He has been posted out, and Indian Army is not policy. Indian Army, we shall not do it again, right? And there is no harm in saying it. But rather than do that, the entire nation in unison, and even the armed forces, not only we stood by him, we rewarded him, and I think we made a mess of the whole thing. Mercifully, and I think it's to the credit of the armed forces, that it has not become a norm. It has not become a norm, and we still adhere to our time-tested model of people-friendly military operations in the insurgency area.
I think it is in this light that you have also written that on the one hand, we seem to be winning the battle, but losing the war. You know, we are winning the battles of militarily, but we are losing the war of losing hearts, losing people's.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is exactly what goes wrong in the insurgencies. You've seen it in Vietnam. Every battle was won by Americans, but what they could not win, the population. It's the battle of the hearts and minds. We have won it everywhere, Northeast, Punjab, and I'm sure we'll win it in Jammu and Kashmir. We don't want the land of Jammu and Kashmir. We want the land of Jammu and Kashmir alive with its people.
Sir, since you mentioned Northeast, I was wondering why there has not been much, in your conflict section, you talk about Indo-China, you talk about Indo-Pakistan, you talk about Kashmir, but there has not been much focus on the Northeast. And, because in your articles elsewhere, you have talked about Nagaland and also the Armed Forces Special Protection Act. But in this book, I didn't find much focus on the Northeast and the insurgency that is happening in the Northeast and your views on that.
Yeah, because there is really no insurgency left in Northeast. There are because of the tribal culture that prevails there. There is of course, apart from the tribes, the Assamese themselves, there were a lot of internal divisions because of the Assamese culture being under threat and Assamese language being under threat by the outsiders and so on and so forth. And so there will always be some groups because of the terrain and all who will start creating trouble. But overall, broadly, as an infraction against the state, I don't think there's any insurgency. In fact, in the Northeast, the faster we remove the Armed Forces Special Powers Act from all these areas, the better it would be. And the rest is then you get the kind of governments that we deserve. If the same people who form governments cannot form a proper government, well, that's a problem omnipresent elsewhere. I think Northeast is enmeshed with the country today. Look at the number of people from Northeast who are working here in the rest of the country. They have left all this thing far behind. There is no insurgency left, in my view, in the Northeast.
So you think it's a done deal in the Northeast?
I think the credit must go to our politicians for this, as well as to the armed forces. That Northeast is a settled issue. There will be sporadic problems here and there, to which can be dealt with by the army there, or it can be dealt with by the police forces. And the Armed Forces Special Powers Act can always be applied for a short duration, for a month, for 2 months, or whatever. And overall, I don't think there is a major problem there.
And then there is this very interestingly titled chapter in your book, which also you have elaborated in the article, but I would like you to comment on this, where you say Indian soldiers don't fight in the name of nationalism.
Yes, I think there is a backdrop of patriotism. Love for the motherland is always there. And to say that I love the country more than somebody else is absolutely wrong. I think there is no person in India who is not patriotic. I have yet to come across anybody who is not patriotic. And I have seen people of all hues everywhere. Of course, there are insurgents and all that with whom we deal with them. Nationalism is extreme patriotism. It identifies, it says that you are superior to the others, and it brings in within part of nationalism it becomes then related to religion. It becomes related to your ethnic composition. So it's there. So what the backdrop of patriotism is always there for the soldiers, and every soldier has got that. But all the experience of world wars, history, and everything, and all the studies done by great captains as well as by scholars, it has been found that soldiers actually fight because of unit cohesion. Because the unit is a family, and no soldier wants to be let down or to be seen to be a coward in front of his comrades. And no soldier wants to let down his comrades. This is what makes the soldiers fight. And I have seen it. I have myself personally served in units which were predominant Sikh units. I've served with Gurkhas, I've served with Jats. Then as a senior commander, I've seen all. This is it. So long as the unit spirit is there, so long as we have this leadership, proper leadership, and the unit cohesion is there, there's army functions as one big family. Our soldiers will deliver. Yes, they are patriotic. We are all patriotic. It's a backdrop.
Do you think you do mention that 2014 marks a kind of a departure from this kind of you say the rise of neo-nationalism and using the armed forces for political gains.
Yeah, actually, yes, there has been the ideology of the Bharatiya Janata Party and the mother organization, the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, its nationalism is very much a part of it. And then, of course, the glory of India, and it is distinct from patriotism. So nationalism is, and the military might, strength of the military, nation has to be strong, is very much part of their ideology. And how can the nation be strong? It's to do with the army. So the army has becomes a part of the overall culture. And in every facet of the national life, you involve the army. The distinction between the army and the government gets blurred. Army is an organ of the state. Now here, if you criticize the government's defense policy, which you have every right to criticize, because after all, governments make a strategy, overall political, security strategy and defense policy. Army is only executes it. So you say, oh, you are criticizing the armed forces, or vice versa. So this is how then the deification that what is happening in Jammu in the valley today is that insurgency compared to 2003, when 2,700 terrorists were killed in 1 year. 2,700. That means number of terrorists were running into thousands total. To today, I find that it's at a very low level, but there's too much of noise made of it. Of course, major incidents have been taken, like the Pulwama attack and all. So the deification doesn't allow reforms within the army. So on one hand, we have army been made part of national life. Army has been exploited for electoral politics. On the other hand, you have not brought about reforms in the army. And at the first sign of trouble on the border, we are scurrying all over the world for buying post-haste buying arms and ammunition, which we should have been buying all these years. Yeah. So this is what happens then. This is what deification, and this is what. So, but having said this, overall, what has happened at the moment is that the army is being politically exploited, not only by the present dispensation. It has all parties try to exploit the army. But army held fast and the hierarchy held fast. They never used to succumb. What has happened today is that today it's only still exploitation at the overall, but the hierarchy, because promotions are controlled by the government, the higher ranks, there is a slight bending with the wind that is noticeable. And this is evident in the kind of advice the military is giving to the government, because till March this year, April this year, we were our present chief of defense staff all the time talked of 2.5 fronts. In fact, every week he would give one statement or the other. Today a shot hasn't yet been fired. No shot has been fired on the LAC as yet. We have only fought a primitive kind of engagement in Galwan, and yet we are busy buying arms abroad. So it should tell you that this advice not given? Did not the government know this? Did not the army inform it? Something is wrong somewhere. Either the military advice is wrong or the government is disregarding.
So you think the military is giving the advice that the government wants to listen to?
Exactly. That's exactly what I said. Otherwise, where is the problem?
Yeah.
All the military should say that we have given the correct advice. The government, then they should tell, if we are not ready for 2.5, we are ready for 1. Or even for 1, we are shot. Yeah. Something like that.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. And one last, which I liked very much, was your advice to the public: respect and support the armed forces, but do not deify them or identify them with the extreme nationalism of the government or the government. I think that's something that we all need to, because I think, as you mentioned, the army gets associated or identified with the nation And if you criticize the army, you are considered unpatriotic. And also what we have seen of involving the army in completely matters that are completely unrelated to the armed forces, showering petals and things like that, where the army is now becoming synonymous with the nation itself. So the army showering petals would mean the nation showering petals.
Please note one thing.
Sir.
Just a point of interest.
Yes.
Very few people have correlated this. This showering of petals took place on 3rd of May. 3rd of May. And that is exactly the time the Chinese were busy entering, intruding into our areas. Exactly the time. Because the intrusion had taken place. That's why the clashes began on 5-6 May.
Right.
Because the intrusion had taken place.
Right. Sir, I'll just take a few questions from the audience.
Yes,
this is one question which has come on the YouTube. Why do we do such blatant transgression across the LAC despite availability of technology and human intelligence and continuous patrolling of at LAC? Why do we need to physically?
This is a major intelligence failure. Either there are two possibilities: either that there was no information, or if there was information, then militarily and politically we have misread the situation. And so this is what I feel, in my view, has happened. Otherwise, there was no reason. And like the Chinese were preempting us in certain areas which were only policed till now. We had forces available there in Ladakh. Like, for example, I'll just give you an example, that Pangong Soli, he came from finger 8 to finger 4. Back in 1988, let alone now, back in 1988, I was the combat group commander, and Sirijap, that is east of finger 8, was one of my preemptive tasks. And the BMPs can swim across water. They are amphibious vehicles. So it was one of my tasks to capture Sirijap as a preemptive operation before the Chinese can do it. And that was 1988. So we had forces. There's a battalion all the time sitting in Chishul. There's a battalion at Lukung. So when we were watching all this, there was no reason why we should not have ourselves occupied the area between finger 4 and finger 8. So there was definitely an intelligence failure, and or we misread the situation. Right. I don't think that we were totally caught unawares in terms of overall information, the electronic means that we had. But of course, electronic means can also be deceived.
Right, right. And Abhishek Waghela asked this question, food being a basic necessity, why is that there is a discrimination between rations of soldiers and officers in the army?
I think this was a legacy that we were having from colonial times, that the English people ate bread and anda, and the soldiers ate roti, puri, sabji, and that kind of a thing. I think this. I was one of the persons who had taken this case very strongly when I was an army commander, and I mentioned it in one of my articles which I have written. I think the gap has been bridged, and as on date, there is very little difference left, and that's more to do with soldiers' preferences. Otherwise, the rations of soldiers and officers today are exactly the same. They should be.
Okay, sir. So one more question is whether the apathy of the government or the communal politics of the government, how much impact do they have on the Indian Army?
I don't think
about the unit cohesion.
Yeah,
how much does
don't
it
think. You see, what happens is that today the soldiers are certainly more aware than the past, than what they were in the past, because as I mentioned earlier, that we used to get fourth class pass soldiers joining us, and today most of them are 10th class or +2 or even higher. Then the television, which is available right up to the last post that we have on the LOC or the LAC, and the mobiles, make soldiers very aware. So if they are aware of a overall climate, I think it does affect them to some extent, and they also start thinking on these lines. But the military rules and regulations, that's why I said that any dilution of the application of rules, regulations, and law, which an unethical leadership is unable to do, dilutes this whole thing. So long as we apply this, I don't think this problem will creep in. Then our unit cohesion is very strong. I think in our units within the army, we have dharmsthals, all religions are the same. I have never felt that anybody, no matter who he was, in the same, I have served in units, I commanded one mechanized infantry, which was old, one Madras. It had Christian troops, it had sort of Hindu troops, it had we mixed them up also, Sikh troops, Muslim troops. Yet we all assembled in the Dharmsthal, and I was myself present, and we just sort of lived as one big family. So this doesn't really affect much. But if we do not, if the leadership starts bending with the wind, and we don't enforce rules, regulations, and all that are there, and we lose our moral compass, which has been the guiding force in the armed forces, then obviously we'll face problems. But at the moment, I don't think there is any problem.
General, you have in a way moved from Twitter to blogs to columns to now a book. And you have just mentioned that television is available till the last post. So in these in this day and age, do you think, banning social media, from the army and, denying them things like WhatsApp and things like, do you think it's anachronistic?
This is a dilemma that I think all countries face, armies of all countries, including the American army. There's a big debate in America also. There has been earlier. Even within India, the debate actually began sometime around 2007-8. And in the beginning, we didn't allow social media. Then we allowed social media with guidelines. Then the guidelines were revised, reviewed. So we did allow them. But what has probably happened is that I think the adversaries also have started exploiting the social media, and a lot of soldiers have been jawans because of isolation, sitting on a post. He's probably all by himself or with a few men, and he's looking at it, and he's going on to Facebook, and they have been honey trapped and by Pakistani agents and all. So armies are generally paranoid about it. Normally, good guidelines and education can resolve this issue, but there are always some people can always err, and because of those errant individuals, we need not punish the entire system. I, for one, feel that it need not come to this kind of a draconian blanket ban, but army is well within its rights to do so. Just as an aside, I must mention to you that when I joined the army in 1968, even if you had a transistor radio or radio on which you could, it was legacy of Second World War, that you could listen to foreign propaganda, you had to register it with the unit. A proper register was maintained. Then the same thing happened with the cameras, that if anybody who possessed the camera, he had to not only do that, he had to when the reels had to be handed over to the regimental police, they would go and get them washed or photographs made, and the photographs were checked. So that kind of a thing. The letters, censorship of letters was on all the time. So now that the mobiles and all have come, so where's the question of censorship? We are talking all the time, and then people are using Facebook and this thing, to talk to their families, which is very, very important. Yeah. So I think a blanket ban is not correct, but guidelines and enforcement should solve the problem.
Sir, I'll just combine two more questions. One is by Naresh and the other one is by Lekha Nair, which is about, in view of what we have seen so far, do you think we are in the worst situation ever in terms of our equation with China? And the second question is, what will be the implications of this Chinese face-off on our relations with Nepal and Bhutan? Is it the worst that we have seen in Indo-China relations?
I think since the Sundrang-Chu incident took place in 1986-87, when there was intrusion in the Sundrang-Chu area. So since then, we have not faced this kind of a situation. At that time, also, there was a very serious situation. And because we were not, at those days, we were not close to the LAC, and our positions were almost 50, 60 kilometers behind. In Ladakh, let alone these areas, our defenses were another 100 kilometers behind. You know, even presently we had some problems in our forward zone, but even we were 100 kilometers behind. And then General Sundarji, in one go, he changed the entire equation. He post-haste moved the army forward, and we went in for Operation Falcon and checkerboard exercises, and we went right up to the LAC. And this face-off continued for quite some time there. And then much later, the Chinese pulled out from there. Some people say after years, but in my view, they actually thinned out from there by about middle of 87. But after that, we had earlier incidents which probably were warning signs. And we got lulled into complacency by Depsang 2014, by Chumar 2013, Chumar 2014, and then by Doklam in 2017. We started following a familiar pattern. The Chinese would come, they would go back, and we would say, okay, this kind of this is all because of differing perceptions, and no. So China was even then giving us notices and giving us very adequate warnings. And that's why we misread the present situation. So certainly it's a very serious situation for us, because they have intruded into sections of our area, which I said are, while their actions are small and appear to be tactical. After all, in Pangong only 8 kilometers, in Lepsang it is allegedly it's about 15 to 18 kilometers. Other places, Bogra, even less. But the strategic significance of these areas is very distinct. It puts China at a phenomenal advantage vis-a-vis us. That we are, if we are not careful, and if we are not filled the voids which were there in the forward zone, we can, if there's escalation, we'll be at a serious disadvantage. Then the whole world is watching us. Our neighbors, the rest of the international community. After all, we are an emerging power. We are the one. The future belongs to, people say, belongs to China and India. And so how do we shape up? How are we going to handle this situation? Are we going to give in? Are we going to squeeze? And that is why I was personally, in my writing, very critical of this obfuscation and the denial that we undertook. It's sending a wrong message to the Chinese who have exploited that statement. In fact, today itself on social media, I wrote an article yesterday that was published, which is about the military options for India to evict the Chinese, as a last resort. The Chinese Twitter handle came back to me and said, "Okay, look, now this the general is sort of threatening us with the kind of Sheikh Chilli type of plans," were to that effect. So I wrote back. I said, "Well, you are windbags, and all it needs is a needle to take the wind out of the bag." So then he said, "Okay, but why are you sort of talking of evicting the Chinese when your Prime Minister says that we have not yet come in? This is the interaction. Maybe it's a Pak handle masquerading as a Chinese handle, but this is the kind of thing that is on social media." And the Chinese have themselves, the Chinese official statements have said that we are in our own territory. It's Indian army which has been sort of interfering with our patrolling. So one is we played into China's hands. Then while we may have a public narrative that may be built up, but to the international community and other watchers, they know exactly what is going on, and they can read between the lines. So I think, of course, the army action on the ground is solid. We have stopped further intrusions, and we are also equally well poised. As I said, as a last resort, we are also capable of taking action, on which I wrote yesterday, and I have given certain options that what we can do. And I mentioned earlier also while talking to the general that should the Chinese escalate, they have got certain advantages, but we should go all out in one particular sector and get sizable territory. Or if we have to do it, then don't go after this area. That is a poor option. Go for a separate area and get a quid pro quo kind of.
Yeah, General, so I just wanted to. There is a question about clarification. When you say that China has occupied our areas, is it physically is it physical occupation or is it a perception?
Absolute physical occupation. There should be no doubts about it that in the area of the fingers in north of Pingongso, he is not only on the ground, he is on top of all the spurs. And this is no rocket science to know. Anybody who comes there, policing actions are done. If that was so, then we should have punched them in the nose and sent them back from there.
What about the figure four, sir?
If they were just policing, then we should have punched them and sent them back. No, they have come in strength. It's a military operation, and then they have taken the spurs going up along all the fingers. Similarly, in the same actions they would have done in Galwan, nobody in the that's a kind of a border incident that takes place in the valleys. Military action will take place on the heights. Similarly, in Hot Springs and Gogra, they are sitting on heights. They are not sitting. They have not come along a track as a kind of a policing action. So they are very much inside. And the thing is that if they are not inside, then what's all this hullabaloo about? If they are just on their side of the LAC, then good enough. Then let's separate out and both sides go back. No, sir, they are not going back, and they are very much here to stay. And they will either go back with major concessions, or we will evict them.
One last question, General, and this is about Indian Army's international ambitions, if I can say that, about peacekeeping forces. And does the Indian Army have any such either ambitions or a policy in terms of playing an international role?
I think this peacekeeping is part of our international obligation. And we have a large standing army. Most countries have very small armies. I mean, UK army has been reduced to 70, 80,000. The Australian army is just 20,000 people. So most of the armies have become frightfully small. America doesn't participate in United Nations operations. Soviet Union doesn't participate in United Nations operations. Even China never used to participate. So then they look towards countries like us, and we are aspirants for the permanent seat in the United Nations. And consequently, we are obliged to be part of the United Nations peacekeeping forces, and our soldiers enjoy a very good reputation. We get to see other armies, and our soldiers get a lot of experience. Again, just to go back to that point about our model insurgency, wherever our army has operated, the general has also been in the United Nations, wherever our army has operated, the population loves it because we follow a model manner in which things are to be done, especially because in all these countries there's internal strife, but that's why we soldiers are deployed. But having said this, it's not this, but in other areas we will have international aspirations, because once India grows our power goals, our CNP, comprehensive national power goals, we will have to take part in as security obligations to the states that look up to us the states with whom we are friendly or with whom we have treaties like Bhutan and all. So there will be a requirement for an expeditionary force. And it has been very much right. General Sundarji planned that we must have one division available for out of area. It's called out of area contingencies, out of the country contingencies. And in my view, we should have we should have a strength of about a core, about 2 divisions, tailor-made, though they have not the same organizations, which should be able to undertake the marine role and also air transported role, so that we can intervene in the neighborhood outside the nation whenever required.
Thank you so much, General, for your patient answering of all the questions. And I think I have more or less covered all the questions that came. And thank you very much for spending your time with us. And once again, congratulations on your book. And thank you once again for agreeing to speak to our audience this evening. Thank you very much, General Panag.
It was a pleasure, Dr. Vijay. It was a pleasure to be with this thing. And I look forward to more interaction with you all in future. And probably once the festivals actually start functioning, I'll definitely come and be part of the festival.
We'll be honored. Thank you so much. Thank you, General Shravan Kumar. And thank you, audience. And let me just end by making this announcement about our next session, which is on August 7th. And we will have a conversation with Priyambada Gopal of Cambridge University. And she will be speaking on her latest book, The Insurgent Empire. And this will be on 7th of August at 7 p.m. So thank you once again on my own behalf and on behalf of the entire team, HLF, my co-directors, Amita Desai, Ajay Gandhi, and Kinnara Murthy. I once again thank all of you for joining us this evening, and I look forward to meeting all of you and many more of you at the next meeting. Thank you very much, and good evening, gentlemen. Thank you so much, sir.